Hello, and welcome to the virtual reception for our live show, Symbolism, now on display at the Frame of Mind Gallery on 8th Street Southeast here in Washington, D.C. 35 artist members submitted 72 pieces for consideration. Our juror, artist and instructor Delna Daster, reported having a very difficult time selecting the final 22 pieces. I first met Delna several years ago when I signed up for her class, Abstract Art, New and Creative Approaches. I'm sure that many of you have taken classes with Delna, either at the Art League School of Alexandria or at the Smithsonian. Personally, I've taken Delna's class at least 5 times because the class format that she has created allows for constant exposure to new artists and to techniques. She begins each class by introducing her students to an artist, some who are famous and others less so. Then she presents examples of the artist's work, focusing on a particular technique that she encourages us to try so that we might expand our creative horizons. Each class ends with an honest but nurturing critique of each student's work. Delna developed a passion for painting as a young child growing up in Mumbai, India. After graduating from the University of Bombay, she obtained a second bachelor's degree in art history from Wellesley College in Massachusetts. She then went on to earn a master's in fine arts in oil painting from the American University here in Washington. She reached her goal to become a painter and started to exhibit regularly. Delna uses her finely honed skills to work intuitively, allowing the painting to lead the way. By using multiple layers, she creates complex abstract work, sometimes architecturally inclined and at other times more organic. She's continuously experimenting with different materials, eager to find new ways to enrich the texture of her surfaces. Her work is included in many private collections, as well as the corporate collections of the State Bank of India, Hilton Hotel Headquarters, and AstraZeneca. Delna shows her work frequently, and last year was one of 2 artists in a wonderful exhibit entitled Intention Invention, presented by the McLean Project for the Arts. And now I'd like to turn the presentation over to Delna, who will describe her experiences jurying our show and provide us some insights into the criteria she used to select the final work.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Mary Beth, for your kind remarks. I'm going to start off by talking about how I juried this show. All right? It was quite remarkable, actually, to try and do it online. The last time I juried at Capitol Hill Art League was a while back, and it was much easier because I would come into the building and the paintings would be brought out in front of me and I would be able to look at them myself clearly and make some decisions. This time, doing it virtually through Smarter Entry was quite the challenge because all the images that showed up in front of me were the same size. And in reality, they were not the same size. Some of them were much bigger than the others. So I had to be very particular about looking at that and considering the sizes when I made my decision. I was able to look at them carefully, take my time, be able to enlarge them so I could see the details and the complexity of the textures and the marks. All of that came into my consideration of each one. I went through this procedure many times, leaving it overnight so that it was, I could settle it in my mind and look at it again afresh. It was quite the challenge, but it was wonderful, actually, to be able to connect with art at a time when we are quite so isolated. So then, in addition to considering the work itself, one of the other things that I had to keep in mind was how many I had to choose. The space at Frame of Mind is limited, so I had to dwindle it down from over 70 pieces submitted to 24, or I think it's 22 now. And that was quite something because there were very many beautiful paintings that I would have liked to have included. But I had to be pretty sharp in my decision, and then I'm happy with the way the show has come to be. Now, what I considered when I chose those 22 and 23 paintings was how they depicted the theme of the show, which was symbolism. So Webster's dictionary defines symbolism as a symbol is something chosen to stand for or represent something else, as an object used to typify a quality, an idea, etc. And for example, the lily is a symbol of purity. What was very fascinating to me was the number of ways that artists submitted their interpretation of symbolism. So some were obviously very political, some were depicted nature, the night sky, some were about food and how food is a symbol in our lives, health, religion, freedom. There was one even that was a fairy tale. So I liked the idea of having different kinds of symbolism represented in the work. That was one criteria. Another was I felt it would enhance the show to have work that varied in its medium. So much of the work that was submitted was acrylic, painted with acrylics or with watercolors. But there were some others, and the others also drew me in. The mixed media were very interesting, and I would like to point out that a few of them that were mixed media. Jane Mann had a very interesting photo montage called Portal. Tamara Ilsat had one called Remembrance, and she had a complicated composition with that one. Social Structure by J. Jaffrey included many varieties of media, and it had acrylic, Conti, pastel, and photographs. So it was a complicated piece which drew me in, and I had to examine various parts of it and see how he used all these different materials. I loved Karen Zen's Hands, which was a colograph print with Chine Collet, and Ellen Smith really blew it away with egg tempera in her painting called Saint Adia. I have been recently working on Yupo, which is like synthetic plastic material on which paint, which is unlike canvas or paper, which absorbs paint. It just sort of floats on top. And she did a very good job. Martina Seswatakov, sorry about the name, painted Such Silence on Yupo. So that was very interesting. And photographs were really very, very well done. I especially like Gloria Grandolin's Ruth is Watching. That was really quite amazing, where there were drops of water that sort of defined the color that Ruth always wore. But I have to say that if there was a good depiction of symbolism in the work, but the painting itself was not done in a manner which was of a high standard or a level, I would not be able to include it. So two things came into consideration. The part where it's the symbolism, as well as the comfort level and pushing the medium so that the work itself was of a good quality. So those were some of the things that I thought about when I did this, when I did my jurying. I do have to mention that there were themes as well in the work, and the themes added to the way that the exhibition unfolded. So there were some that were very serious, as in Carolyn Ronthaler's August the 6th, 1945, which was the day that Hiroshima was bombed. Steve Cunin's photograph called Retired, which showed a ship that had served the country so well. But to balance that out, there were some humorous ones. And the Lynn Schlimm's Great American Chicken House was really good. And Gloria Grandolin's Ruth is Watching, which I mentioned about the drops, that had a sense of humor as well. So there was that variety that I included to try and make the show quite interesting. I would suggest, however, that what made my work easier was to read some of the notes that were written. There were very few notes included. I think you were given the option of including a note with your work, and it helped because it defined what the artist was thinking and how they were going to proceed. And that being said, I think that's about all I have to say. I did notice that the work sort of tended to be on the smaller size. Perhaps that was because you knew that the space it was going to be shown in was small, and therefore it would accommodate smaller pieces better. But I do encourage you to use larger canvases because it gives a greater sense of freedom. And that's what I have to say about jurying the work. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm back again, and this time I'm delighted to be awarding the prizes. It was not easy to make a decision about who gets prizes, and I was asked to give 2 honorable mentions and then 3 other first, second, and third prizes. So, the first honorable mention goes to Steve Cunin with his photograph Retired. Congratulations, Steve. Well done. And I don't have the paintings in front of me, so I've had to make notes about what I saw in them. I'd like to read to you what Steve wrote about his work. He was one of the few people who elaborated in the notes. He said, "The boat represents a journey, a crossing, an adventure and exploration. In the Bible, the boat is a symbol of safety for Christians swimming in a sea of heathen evil and persecution. The USS Barry was first docked at the Navy Yard in 1983. It was removed in 2015 and was dismantled for scrap. At the departure ceremony, retired Rear Admiral Sam Cox said, 'She was not just a ship made of metal, but she represents a legacy of valor and sacrifice of those who served.'" So indeed, this was very symbolic. What I found quite wonderful in the painting, in the photograph, was the depiction of this image. The boat, the beautiful ship, stands right in front of you, facing forward. And what I noticed after reading the notes that Steve had written was the mast of the ship was almost like a crucifix, sort of referring to the Christianity and symbolism that he was referring to previously. And the photograph itself was very elegant. Okay, the placement of the ship was front and center, and it sort of drew the people in, the audience in. It was like a strong diamond shape, and it made the viewer look at it almost in a geometrical fashion. There are contrasting values. There are some very pale values which make the lines stand out. There are soft blurred shapes in the background, so there's a great variety. The ropes, walkways, and nets make strong dark patterns, which are in contrast to that softness. And they lead the eye in from the outline, the boundaries of the photograph, right into the center. The sky is pale, as is the sea. But if you look to the right of the work, there are shadows which create broken stripes. So it's sort of like a staccato in contrast to the rest of the work. And it is as if the ship is aiming towards us, making its plea to be recognized for what it has stood for. So well done, Steve. The second honorable mention is Nan Raphael's "To RBG with Love." The artist obviously loved RBG, and the way that she portrayed her, the combination of a photograph that she took of all the flowers and all the notes that were left behind in honor of her passing, became the background. Over this, she painted the face of RBG, okay? And this busy background is painted over very simply with black lines, which varied. And the ink that she uses, or perhaps the paint, is symbolic of her passing, the blackness of it perhaps. And a few lines carefully described her face. The lines around her eyes, her glasses, were very thick, and it sort of made her eyes sort of stare out at you. And you could see how focused she was. And then she painted the collar, which she always wore, RBG always wore, very delicately. So there was this contrast. So there were many things playing into this image that she made. And it's not so easy to do a portrait with such few lines. So I think she did it very beautifully. Congratulations, Nan. All right, the third runner-up, moving on, is Rising Up by Judy Searles. In this one, it's a contrast with the other two, and I saw it symbolic of nature, where she has all these thrusting plants coming up out into the air above them. The air is polluted, it's green, So it sort of symbolizes for me climate change. And the way that she's done it is the simplicity of the sky above, flat, in contrast to the really writhing shapes that come out from the bottom. It's almost as if these plants are protesting the pollution, perhaps, that's been going on. Her lines move upwards, they're thick, they're thin, they're writhing, and then she has used contrasting colors, some warm colors, some cool colors. She's paid a lot of attention to where she has placed them. Placement of color in a composition is vitally important, and so her doing this, paying attention to all of this, has made the work pretty compelling. And there's this seething underwater or underground sort of motion and movement, and then the stillness of the sky above. I think that's what I have to say about it. Well done, Judy. So the second runner-up is Mary Beth, who has been doing all the work behind the scenes to get our video made. And I was delighted that I chose her work. And Mary Beth's work is called Walk Among the Stars. What drew me to it right away was its shape. In contrast to the regular rectangles and squares, she chose a format that was quite different. It's unconventional, it's narrow, it's wide. And that itself has been thought about, she's thought about bringing in a new kind of shape. Well, in addition to that, she has carefully considered all the layers that have been ongoing, right? There are so many layers that she had to create. Which colors go on first, which follow. The bright pink and red band stretches across the canvas from edge to edge over a dark blue background. And that took some thinking, some planning. The stars that are both behind and on top of this band are not sort of just sporadically placed wherever she wanted. She thought about the placement. It is important. Every mark that you make has to be considered. And I think the placement of these stars shows how much she thought about where each one went. And the stars also differ in their shape, from being tiny little points to rather bigger ones. They are in groups. They stand boldly by themselves. And then the thing that is sort of mysterious about all this is, what is this golden scaffolding? Where is it leading us to? It draws the viewer in, and I guess each one has their own interpretation of what it is. And the scaffolding kind of takes your eye backwards and out of the paintings, and sort of mysterious as where is it going to lead us to? It's almost a fantasy. She's used diluted washes that have created drips, pretty carefully done. And then she has straight lines and curved lines, and all of these have been thought out very carefully. So well done, Mary Beth. I congratulate you. And finally, the first place winner is Tara Hamilton, 2020, the year. We've had quite a year. And it's a very small work. It's only, I think I may have the wrong sizes of it. Anyway, it's a small work, and it's intricate. It's intricate. She has a newspaper, the Washington Post, and then she has a cup of coffee, and then she has a box of tissue. All right? So this is symbolic of the sorrow that we have all suffered. The box of Kleenex has been painted so beautifully, and the curling of the Washington Post edges has been considered. It breaks, it takes place in certain ways, and then there's a pause, and then it continues. And the details have really been made clear. There are some words that you can read on the Washington Post. The mug have been so beautifully painted. There's this contrast between the simplicity, the outline of the whole piece, and the white of the paper around it. The shape of the whole is very interesting and thoughtfully placed and positioned. Behind the mug, on the newspaper, there are a few little red marks, and that sort of elevates it from being a black and white picture with some blue thrown in for shadows into something else. It enlivens it. I think that's about it, I have to say, that the work was so very, very well done. It was remarkably painted, and I congratulate you, Dara. And on that note, I am going to end, and I have just a few little remarks to make as I finish up here. I think it's important to take really good photographs of your images that you submit. I would submit to many places and be brave. You're going to be rejected. That's how it is. That's the life of the artist. And I also think that as you are working, it would be a good idea to take a photograph of each stage. It becomes a memory. It reminds you of how the art progressed. I keep notes constantly, which remind me of what I have done in case I need to return to it and follow the procedure that I did in a previous painting. Mine is very mixed media, and I have so much going on that I can't always remember how I've done it. So I think that would be a recommendation of mine. I would suggest going to museums, going to galleries, expanding your knowledge of different artists that you care for, and be patient. Art doesn't come easily. You have to take care. You have to grow it. And I'm so delighted to have been part of this. I thank you so much for the opportunity, and I wish you all well. Thank you very much.